Welcome to Chapter 7, Section 2, entitled Circle Graphs. First of all, vocabulary word, a circle graph is used to compare data that are parts of a whole. All right, interpreting circle graph pieces. This is not a part of your note-taking guides, but is an important aspect of this. Right here, if you're looking at a 90-degree angle, if this is 90 degrees, then this is 1/4 or 25%. So that being said, if I took this piece right here and slid it just a little bit beyond 25%, you would then say that it is possibly 30%. Okay, so anything that's just beyond 25%, you need to decide how much it is beyond it. All the way straight up and down, you're looking at 50%. Okay, as this piece, if this piece shifts up, even to right there, you're looking at, well, you're trying to decide whether or not this has become maybe 40%, maybe 35%. Right? It's an interpretation. Right? We're not going to deal with the actual angles right now, but that is how you could interpret the percentages. So let's do a few of them. All right, let's take a look at these pieces here. This one here, since it's 90 degrees, for sure, 25%. This again, up and down, 25%. Exactly. Which makes sense because these two pieces together should add up to 50. Now, these two pieces, well, you kind of have to decide what we're looking at here. You know that that's 25, and this looks like it splits that 25 exactly in half. So you would say 25 and let's say 13 all together would make this piece here 38%. If this is 38%, then this leaves 12%. All right, you have to remember that going by the 25 and the 50 should be enough for you to determine how much each piece is worth. So let's look at our first example. Here's a table. These are the percentages. The times 0 to 1, 35%, 1 to 2, 10%, 2 to 3, 25%, and 3 or more hours, 30%. And so we will now need to sketch a circle graph to display the data. And remember to label each section. So let's take a look at how this is set up. Write a fraction to represent each percent. Right? You don't necessarily have to write a fraction. We know what 25% looks like. 35 over 100 ends up being 7/20. 10 over 100, 10% is 10 over 100, which is 1/10. 30% is 30 over 100, or 3/10. And 25 over 100 is 1/4. Now it's good practice to get these fractions. All right, so here here is a graph. It's already sliced up for you. And you can pretty much tell that the smallest portion of this, and that since 10% is equal to 1/10, all right, we're not going to quite do this in order. We're going to start with the 25%. Okay, since 25% is 1/4, mark 1/4 of the circle for 2/3 for 2 to 3 hours. So right here is that 90 degrees. Okay, that's what I would be looking for. If we were to add 30, okay, imagine this circle. Here, 1 second. Imagine if this line had been straight across. That'd be 25, and 25 is 50. But then add a tiny bit more to make 30. That's why this piece right here is a little bit bigger than that. Okay. And then that means we have 10 and 35. Well, the 10% is about half of another 25. So we could have imagined this as being 25 and cutting it in 10%, cutting it in half to get 10%, which then leaves the remaining 35% of our work. So hopefully we'll see an example here, and we'll work this out. All right, so let's take a look at this. Look at all these percentages here. The table shows student choices. Sketch a circle graph to display the data. You have to figure out how to set these up, and these are some pretty tough ones. The one we'll probably start with is this 30%. The reason we're going to start with that 30% is because it's just about 25. So you could start with 25 and then take a guess and say 25 with a little bit more gives me 30%. Okay, 30%. So 30% is baseball. Now let's talk about what's left from this. If this is 30%, then this part right here must be 20%, right? Because altogether it's 50. So if 30 is here, that means 20% is right here. And so 30% is baseball, 20% is football. And now we can look at how the rest of these add up. So 30% is done, 20% is done. Now let's look at some of these other ones here. 12, 10, and 12. All right. So what we have right now, if we put a line right here, that's 30, 20 was 50. That means these two here are 25 at this time. If I shorten this a tiny bit, all right, it was 25. Now it's close to 19. And we can say that 19 is tennis. Okay, and so what's left over here? Well, 19, that means this is this much is left over. Okay, we have to figure out how to divide that. And since 9, 10, and 12 are all quite close, we can go ahead and start by making these perfectly into thirds. So once they're broken up equally into thirds, one of them needs to be larger than the other by a tiny, tiny bit. Once I move that, this was 10%, now is 9%. 9% is soccer. this, which was a 10%, and we added some to it, we can say is 12%, or basketball. And then that leaves hockey as our last percentage. And now we've made a nice circle graph with all this information. All right. All right, so remember this. When you read and interpret a circle graph, it is helpful to remember that the percent of all the sections add up to 100. So if we go back to this circle, if we add up all of these numbers, they should add up to 100. Otherwise, there's some piece that is missing. All right. This circle graph shows which method of transportation students use to get to Martin Luther King Jr.'s middle school. The questions are, which method of transportation do most students use? The largest section of the graph is the section that represents. So we're looking at the percentages here, and the number that is the biggest number is the bus at 36%. Okay. So the method of transportation most students use is the bus. Which two methods of transportation are used by the least amount of students? So the smallest section of the graph are the sections that represent, let's see, which two methods of transportation? They represent walking and moped. So, and walking was 14%, and moped was 7%. So, you can say walk and mopeds are the two methods of transportation used by the least amount of students. How does the number of students who ride mopeds to school compare to the number of students who take the bus? The percent of students who ride a moped is 7%. And the percent of students who ride the bus is 36%. So when you're looking at those two numbers, you could say a lot of different things, but 7 times 5 is 35. So that means the number of students who take the bus is about 5 times the number of students who ride a moped. All right, let's do this on your own. Why don't you actually pause the video and try this on your own. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you paused the video and you answered, which flavor of ice cream do most students prefer? So you should compare the numbers 12, 25, 13, 16, and 34. And notice that cookie dough ice cream at 34% is preferred by the most students. Which two flavors are the least favorite among the students? So again, you're looking at the percentages. 12, 25, 13, 16, and 34. So which two numbers are the smallest? You should say that strawberry at 12% and vanilla at 13% are the least favorite among students. How does the number of students who prefer peanut butter ice cream compare to the number of students who prefer cookie dough? Well, peanut butter ice cream was 16%. Cookie dough ice cream is 34%. And if you look at the two numbers, if you double 16%, you get to close to 34. So your answer should be about 2 times as much. So they like cookie dough twice as much as peanut butter. All right, so for this section, you need to make sure you do CYUs on page 373, and they are exercises 1 to 4. And then, of course, we will do this part in class. Good luck.